Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen McGhee. I am the superintendent of schools of the Harperwood School District. And I have a very special guest with me today. Other than me doing the introduction, I would like for her to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does on a day-to-day basis, and then we're going to get right into the topic. And we're going to deal with literacy, which is a primary function, but it's also a civil right within the context of how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kristen Vie-Hacks. I'm the director of the Harper Woods Public Library. I have been here at the library almost exactly 8 years, and I've got over 25 years experience working with libraries and working with the public in helping them with all of their needs through the library.
Can I call you Christine?
Kristen.
Kristen, can I call you?
Yes, absolutely.
Kristen, here we go. So, do you want the standard interview or do you want to go into like hyperlink?
I don't know what's the difference.
Well, standard is basic questions like, tell me something about yourself.
Okay.
What is your passion? How did you become, or how did you get off into literacy yourself? That's basic.
Okay. And
Hyperlink is
you know what? Surprise me. Hit me with what you want.
So let's start off with the hyperlink.
Okay.
So we've heard a lot of criticisms, but also the enhancements of what AI would actually do, not only in education, but across America. Industry, but as a literacy specialist, someone who's rooted in that, and you've been a part of it for years. Okay, how do you think that AI is going to affect students and education, but also the industry itself?
AI in that sense is so new that librarians are just starting to grapple with that. I know that with my library cooperative, we are talking about how AI can be used to help students and to help the public. I'm thinking that on one hand, we have to be really careful. We have to be mindful of copyright issues, which is also an issue with libraries as well. We're already hearing about authors who are finding their works, as well as audiobooks having copyright violations. But I think with AI, and I'm thinking of AI in terms of speaking with audiobooks, with literacy in that sense. I think there's a real opportunity there to help reluctant readers. I know that there are plenty of people out there who say reading is, you've got that book in your hands, that's all that reading is. Whereas from my perspective, I think that reading will, whether it's done with audiobooks, storytelling, graphic novels, that is any sort of way of getting kids familiar with literacy, getting them comfortable with it. So in general, I think there's potential there that we have not even begun to explore yet.
So do you think in the field of education and industry itself that it should be where, remember when the internet first came in, we had no guidelines. And it's very similar now that we have no guidelines.
That's true.
And do you think it should be governed from a governmental standpoint, or as educators that we sit down and put guidelines together?
I would like to see educators, librarians, publishers work together on this. I think this is all so new, and what I do know is that unfortunately government tends to work very slow. And so in order to try to catch up with this, I don't know that they'll be fast enough, but I think that we will see teachers and students and forward-thinking librarians work with this, and government will have to play catch up afterwards. But I think that there's something to be said for keeping in mind guidelines and best practices for how to work with students in this.
Well, that's the reason I brought up the internet, because we know the government is extremely slow.
Yes.
And what my fear is that by the time they put guidelines together, that it will be so far gone, because we're still putting guidelines together for the internet and its uses in social media. And AI is just another layer of that.
Yes.
And by the time we get to it, we might be going down a rabbit hole that we can't return from. And I hope that's not the case.
I don't know. I think that AI is going to be a form of media, and you can always use the media, whether it's the internet, whether it's print books, they can always be used either negatively or positively.
Mhm.
And I think alerting parents and working with them as educators and librarians, I think that we will come up with ways to come up with some of these best practices. We're still playing catch up.
Mhm. So tell me what your thoughts are about the Writers Guild, and that's in the wheelhouse because we know what that was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the strike is over now.
Yes.
But it kind of goes back to social media and industry and technology itself and tapping into AI.
Well, I know that I just read that the Screen Actors Guild is preparing to go on strike within the video game industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is. Do you remember? Was it the Super Bowl or one of those where they were having? Oh, who was? I think it was. They did Tupac,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a digital representation of
It was
him.
an NIL, name, image, and likeness.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So I think there's a lot of fear with that for what this can do. Ultimately, we want to make sure that creators will continue to get paid for what they create, that
Mhm.
actors and actresses will be fairly paid as well for the work that they do. And we
Yeah.
want to make sure as well that authors, who come up with the creations will be able to benefit from that.
it. Yeah, yeah. So, where did you derive your love as a little girl from reading? Where did that come from?
Truly, I don't ever remember not reading.
Okay.
My mom tells a story of me being 2 or 3 years old, reading men's hats in a department store,
Mm-hmm.
and I never not read. I had a great example set up with my parents. Both of my mom and dad have been avid readers.
Mm-hmm.
I received books as I received books as gifts as a child, and honestly, um, it's always been there. And although with all that being true, it never occurred to me to be a librarian until I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And then I thought, oh well, yeah, this is something that I could follow.
Okay. That's amazing because my wife actually, for years she's been an ELA teacher and now she's a consultant. But that was one of she ended up working at Wayne State, not working toward a coursework at Wayne State
Mm-hmm.
to become a librarian.
Yes.
So we had this conversation and the importance of being a librarian and the staple in the community. Tell us about the transition from being a librarian from that of analog
Mm-hmm.
to digital.
It's fun that you should ask that because I was right in that realm of when I was getting my master's degree in library science. I was right at the edge of that. So I think those librarians who maybe came up like 5 years or so after me tend to be more digital, whereas I'm on that cusp of everyone looking at analog, looking at the print resources. I find that there's not so many questions now what we used to call ready reference, where someone would ask how long is the Nile River or what's the population of Bangkok. But what we are finding is that when people come in, they need more advanced help, they need more help with more complicated questions. And what I'm also finding is, and I didn't think that this would happen, we are helping people a lot with computers. We are guiding them. Try this website. Here's how you print things out. Here's how you might format this. I honestly thought, because I started as a librarian, well, I don't know. My first job was in 1998. So I truly thought that after 25 years or so that we would not be needing to help people anymore. I thought that, but they're still needing our guidance, and we're still happy to give
Where
it.
did you go to school?
I got my bachelor's degree at Western Michigan University and my master's degree at University of Maryland.
Okay.
I lived on the East Coast for a few years.
Okay, I was out there for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I worked for the U.S. government printing office for a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I lived in Crystal City,
All right. Yep. I remember that
Alexandria,
was. Yep. I lived in Hyattsville, Maryland.
Falls Church, and I think I'm trying to remember how to get out the high school. I went out there, I just didn't live there.
Yeah.
Great. So hear me. I'm looking at some of the basic things that I have here. What is the biggest barrier that you know
Mm-hmm.
to literacy, and how can we overcome it?
I think one of the biggest barriers to literacy really has to be inequity. It is sad for me to see how many students there are who don't have access to the things that they need to have access to the books, to have access to someone who not only can help them read, but is passionate about helping them read. And that is one of the features I like of being in a public library, is that we are a resource once the child is born. As far as we're concerned, parents can start bringing in their little ones right away, start teaching them what books are, and also bring home the books for themselves so that they can model that sort of action.
So the library itself
Mhm.
has the traffic
Mhm.
that frequents the library, has it gotten back up to pre-COVID levels, or is it still?
It's still a little low. We're still trying to encourage people that we're there at 19601 Harper. We're right next to City Hall, and we encourage people to come on in and see us. Um, it is sad where we sometimes still have people who are in their who are middle aged. I've lived here 20 years. I didn't know this library was here. Like, what else can we do?
Listen, I will tell you that your biggest advocate is my board member, Mrs. Joan Menino.
Oh,
Menino,
yes.
she's been on the board for, I believe, almost 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And literally every time we have our board meetings, we record it for her. She's a direct advocate of Harper Woods Library.
She's one of our most passionate users. I love seeing her.
Yeah. And that's her exercise walk. She'll walk down the block, make that. I think she has to make a left and come directly to the library.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of trends and changes in that of literacy, I talked about going from the analog to that itself, that digital piece. What other shifts do you see in literacy that you believe are pertinent?
I am seeing that the youngsters who come in are a little bit more interested in a wider variety of what we have to offer. I'm seeing that graphic novels are hugely popular, and I think that they are a great way to introduce, as I mentioned earlier, introduce reluctant readers. I think that there's more than one way to learn, and I think that the students who are allowed to enjoy the graphic novels and who are encouraged to see the pictures if they're more visually based and work in the story that way. That's definitely one of the trends that I'm seeing. And we're still seeing parents who come in bringing in their little ones, and we love to see that. What we're also seeing is that there's more engagement with people in their smartphones and digital tablets. And so we've reached out in that way as well. All Harper Woods library card holders have access to our digital ebook and e-audiobook platform, and those have become much more popular as well. So it's a way to, whether you listen to your ebooks in your car on your way to work, like I do, and whether you're reading on your Kindle, that is definitely another trend that we're seeing. And with the kids having the younger and younger, having their devices at young ages now, we also have kids books available on that. So that's a way for children to still be reading, even if they're doing it on a device.
So, from a percentage, who generally brings the children in? The parents or the grandparents?
Parents.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay, good,
They really do.
good. That's good. So we touched on a lot of things.
Mhm.
It's one thing, and you kind of gave a partial answer, but how can we improve the literacy rates amongst, school age children
Mhm.
from that of kindergarten through 12th grade?
Well, honestly, one of the things we love to see is parents. The parents are the greatest influencers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I saw an adorable little TikTok video of a mom just sitting there reading her book, and her little one decided he didn't want to play on the floor anymore. He wanted to read like mama did. So
Mm-hmm.
he got up and he got his book and they were reading together. That's the sort of thing that we're really seeing. One of the programs that we have is 1,000 books before kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea that students who don't start reading until kindergarten, until they're exposed to formal school in the first place, they're already, they're already behind. They're by working with their students, by working with their little ones, bringing them to the library, they're going to have a greater vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have more knowledge of what's going on in the world, and they're going to be more ready for school and associate reading with pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
We do find, and this has been true throughout most of my career, that it seems to be parents, little ones love to read. They love to read. They come in for the summer reading program where you get prizes. If you're going to read, you might as well get a prize for it too. And then they read, and then it starts to slack off a little bit with teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a lot of things going on, and that's okay. And reading for pleasure tends to go down until they become adults and they start reading again to their own kids once they
Exactly.
start having children. So that is one of the greatest things I think that they can do. Model that, not just take the kids to the library and say, "Here, let's get some books," but to model that behavior as well and read for themselves.
So literally, and this is from other research, and it talked about that of having a median in-class income. I'm sure you've heard this before.
Mhm.
That if you have at least a 5,000 word vocabulary, that will align itself almost to that of a median class income. And if it's over 10,000 words, that
Mhm.
you'll be closer to that of an upper class income. What do you think about
I wonder if I don't know necessarily that um, one is correspondent with the other. I don't know. I remember reading a study once, and what was it? It said something like children that have books in their home are more likely to do better in school,
that? Mm-hmm.
whereas it isn't so much, oh, put books in front of the children and they will automatically be great. It's more the case of children who have books in the home have parents who value books and who read to them, and
That's okay.
therefore they're going to be doing better that way. But regardless, I think that having kids reading, having those vocabularies, if nothing else, that's your education. No one can take that away from you. That is a wealth that is yours no matter what.
So I've asked a lot of questions. Actually, it's your turn to ask a question or two of me.
Well, I guess what I was, how are you finding the kids? Do you hear them talking about the public library? How are you finding literacy and reading and library services and media studies available in your schools?
So literally, at Beacon and Tyrone
Mm-hmm.
and the middle school, we have libraries.
Okay.
Okay. At the high school, there isn't a library. Actually, the library was removed years ago because of lack of space. Okay. And last year, this is the third, so the year before, I took that space and we turned that actual space into Meta 24,
Okay.
which is Make Enterprise Teach and Achieve, which focuses on that of business and entrepreneurship and literacy through business and entrepreneurship. So mind you, instead of going back to a traditional library itself, because the space had already been broken up into 6 or 7, actual rooms without having to break down walls.
Mhm.
Okay, but I think for me, our district primary focus is literacy and numeracy, reading and that math itself. Do I find children talking about the library? I'm not with the kids a lot, you know,
Fair
but when we are
Mhm.
together, we're not talking about the library. But I think what I find, and kids aren't here, they're actually here now, they probably find more solace in finding information
Mhm.
through the use of the phone and social media and things of that nature. Am I correct? How about you? Yeah. So, mind you, I think that transition from analog to digital
Mhm.
is pivotal. Being able to look at the different learning modalities of children, knowing that we have those 6 learning modalities.
Mhm.
We focus on that of the M6 itself that deals with that of visual and kinesthetic learning and things of that nature. But we are constantly infusing through curriculum the use of literacy and numeracy. Actually, we will launch a new campaign for our curriculum at Beacon K1 and 2.
Mhm.
Within the next week, we're going to send out to a parent survey
Mhm.
to talk about what parents believe should be in the curriculum itself, you know, and then keeping in mind diversity, equity, and full inclusion. So that will be really the first time in the history of Harper Woods. So they've actually sent out information aligned to curriculum and having parents to be an equal partner and stakeholder within the process, which in this day and age is pivotal, you know, and we want to we want to have that as a mantra,
Mhm.
but make sure that parents are an integrated part of it because it goes back to the dinner table conversation.
Right.
You know, when the child sees mommy and daddy reading,
Mhm.
they begin to mimic that behavior, and then
Mhm.
they catch that bug and thirst for reading, or that of doing math or picking up. Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing when you say those sorts of things, that tells me that for the teens, it sounds like our digital resources might be more interesting to you. So, a book that you can read on your phone or on your tablet. No, you still like in print? There, I mean, and we do hear that too. There's
Yeah.
nothing. There's nothing like a book.
Yeah, and I think where we are in this day and age, there were times they were burning books. You know,
And they're starting to do
yeah,
that again. They
yeah,
did that in Missouri not
yeah,
too long ago,
right, right,
which honestly, or they modeled it like
yeah,
they could,
exactly,
and that honestly breaks my heart. And
right,
censorship is definitely a hot issue
yeah,
that's going on with libraries right now. I have been blessing myself that we are in a community that
that
values our
values readers, yeah,
library and
yeah,
values readers and um, the ability to choose for yourself to read what you want,
hmm,
and as a parent to choose what your children read,
yeah,
and to it's absolutely your right and it's your duty to
yeah,
choose what your children read, but I don't think that they should be choosing what other parents children
exactly,
read.
and that's the premise of having uh, the appropriate context of conversations at the
Mhm.
dinner table.
Right.
You know, reading
Hmm.
itself, just the nucleus of a household, and being able to fortify literacy and character and morals and things of that nature,
Right.
you know, because you know that the child is going to leave the household.
Right.
They're going to leave the household and they have to go out into this world or whatever the world offers. Okay. But as long as they are anchored
Yes.
within the context of the household, and that comes through conversation, that comes through literacy, that comes through modeling behaviors and things of that nature, they won't shift. They
Right.
won't sway away from that. And they'll stick to the beliefs of the family. It's just when
Right.
you do the opposite of that,
Right.
and then they become like a hollow vessel, you know, more so than anything else. You said what, we got 6 minutes? Okay, yeah, 7 minutes. Okay, we're getting close. We're getting close. So, because we talked about censorship, you know,
Hmm.
and so Michigan has not been a hot button for that as of yet.
Not the whole
Not
state.
the whole state, right? Yeah,
There's
I think we have
definitely
others that like the whole state is on fire.
Texas is definitely an
Yeah,
issue. Florida is an issue,
yeah,
and honestly, it breaks my heart to hear these sorts of things. I know that a challenge, some of the challenging issues. Every year, the American Library Association publishes the most challenged books, and generally, they have been LGBTQ plus
hmm,
materials. And in the past few years, we're starting to see books that deal with racial equity
Mhm.
or other issues are also being challenged, which I don't understand,
Yeah.
but makes me very, very sad and frustrated to hear these sorts of things. We have um, school communities out on the west side of the state. We have one, I think Hillsdale has been has seen some challenges as well. But as a whole, the Michigan Library Association did create a survey that said well over 76% of the state, I think that's right about the number, um, do not support
Yeah.
censorship of books in any way.
And I think with that, when you start talking about censorship,
Mhm.
that promotes monolithic thought.
Yes.
You know, and you don't have voice and choice
Mm-hmm.
to have freedom of thought. You
Right.
know, and we're here in America, you know, the land of the brave and home of the free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that really, I would think, for the rest of our lifetimes, that will be the trajectory. And we
Right.
see challenges to that within that. So, do you have any more questions for me?
Well, I guess I'm hoping that I can look for your support when we reach out. I've already been in contact with some of the library staff over at Beacon as well as at Tyrone, reaching out in a way that we, excuse me, in ways that we can support the school, support the students, and their goals.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. I think this set the segue for that. I thought there was before they had some type of a digital.
Yes, the virtual library card,
Yes.
which is something that we are still hoping to do, where
Okay.
students, even if all students who live in Harper Woods are eligible to get a card, and I'm working with our library board to make a non-resident card,
Okay.
so they would only be able to use Harper Woods.
Okay.
But even students who live in Detroit or other areas would at least be able to get a library card towards using just the Harper Woods library.
Okay.
So that is something that we are investigating and hoping to put into place in the next couple of months.
Okay. So my chief academic officer, Dr. Carruthers, and then of course with Mrs. Phillips,
Okay.
we'll be in contact to see how we can do a campaign for that,
Okay.
starting with that from elementary on through high school.
That would be great. We'd
That'd be
love to see you all.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, this is it. Thank you all very much for tuning in to the Superintendent's Next Generation Readiness podcast. I'd like to thank Kristen. Okay.
You got it.
There we go. For coming out to be my special guest. I'd like to thank everyone behind the scenes, my staff, as well as Ms. Phillips. Thank you all for putting this together for me. And we're out.